Cheers again for the continued support, getting good numbers and views, especially on YouTube and on the meetups that we've been hosting. I'm here today with Alex Smith. He's an Android developer at Capital One. Alex, for the guys who don't know, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, you already know my name. So as you said, I'm working at Capital One as an Android engineer. Before that, I was working at Just Eat, and before that, I was actually working in television broadcasting. So I took a bit of a non-traditional route into tech. Coding became something of a hobby for me for a long time, and then I decided that I wanted to make a career out of it. So I built a portfolio in lieu of not having a computer science degree or anything like that, and somehow managed to convince Just Eat to hire me. So that was great. That was fantastic, and I've loved my tech career ever since. So when I joined Just Eat, I went into a role working with Xamarin cross-platform, which was great. I kind of picked up Xamarin basically because when I was building apps for a hobby, I kind of wanted to show it off to my family and friends. But you know, if I was just building on one platform, I could only show them on, say, Android or iOS. So when I discovered Xamarin and got into it, I kind of realized that I could build cross-platform with only a little bit more effort to kind of do that. So that's what got me interested in cross-platform development. And then that's how I ended up getting that role at Just Eat.
Definitely. And like you said, obviously you didn't sort of come in the traditional computer science route. Like you said, you were working in TV. I think when we spoke with Voice for maybe 5-6 years, you were doing that. So totally something on the other side, and then started doing the Xamarin in your spare time. How did you find sort of picking that up? Was it something you sort of picked up pretty fast, or how was that?
No. It was about 1.5 to 2 years of doing it, and to begin with, it was really just going to be a hobby. It was just I kind of took an interest in code and challenged myself to kind of see if it was something I could do, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, I think when I describe it, I always liken it to kind of video games in terms of like you try hard so much to like get something to work, you know, to kind of like complete that level, and then when it works, you hit go on it and it works, you kind of get that endorphin hit, and you just get addicted to that. So but it for a while it was just really going to be a hobby, and I was going to kind of carry on with my career, but it got to a point where I realized that I was enjoying my hobby a lot more than my job. So that's when I decided that I was going to take it a bit more seriously.
Yeah, and like you said, you said where you didn't do that computer science route or didn't have any commercial experience, you obviously decided to do that. Or was it you decided to build your portfolio? So when you mentioned that, what sort of things did you do? Did you have sample apps, or did you use GitHub, Stack Overflow? What sort of things were you building with that?
Yeah, exactly those things. So it turned out that when I kind of joined, when I started working with Xamarin, the community was still kind of growing. There was still a lot of gaps for things like libraries that kind of, add-ons that people could just use to plug into their apps. During kind of my learning and kind of trying to build some like semi-decent apps, I ended up building a couple of libraries that I hosted on GitHub, and one or two of those actually were quite successful. There was a lot of interest in them, a lot of support, people contributing to those. So that was great. And alongside that, I was trying to build I'm into cycling, so I was trying to build a cycling app that kind of, it was a weather app which you kind of link with your Strava account. Strava is kind of like a online cycling and sports community. They do running and lots of other sports as well.
Okay.
But you can kind of link your Strava account, download your pre-planned routes, and basically plot the weather out along that route roughly at the time you're going to be in those various places, and use that to kind of help you prepare for your ride. So that was kind of like my main focus for that portfolio piece, using those kind of libraries that I'd hosted before. Yeah, I actually managed to get that onto the store. It's not there anymore, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it was up there for a good couple of years, and it was a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, and you mentioned obviously that was all in your first sort of personal experience. So that was, like you say, 1 to 2 years doing Xamarin, and then you eventually got your position at Just Eat, and that was obviously Xamarin still at the time. I know when we spoke, you obviously said things were going on down there, and then you decided you got the opportunity to work on the native side of things, and obviously that's how you've developed your Android career. How did you find transitioning from cross-platform to native?
So I think there's some really interesting points, like having experienced both the cross-platform and the native side. There's a lot that both can kind of learn from each other. I mean, when you're building cross-platform, for example, you're kind of forced to really think about your architecture and the way that you're designing your code base, and kind of, without even realizing it, I was learning how to build a modular app architecture. Just because, you know, with a Xamarin app, for example, you have I was using Xamarin native, not Xamarin Forms mostly. So you have your kind of native UI layers for iOS, for Android, or for any other platform. But then you also need your like core layers and kind of stuff that's shared between the two. Otherwise, you're basically just building two apps anyway, and there's no point going cross-platform in the first place. So yeah, when I transitioned to native development, it kind of made that, you know, really easy from an architecture point of view. Is kind of understanding what good architecture looks like, and how it can benefit native or cross-platform. So that was really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So like you say, obviously it was that transition was pretty sort of easy for yourself, and obviously since then you've been doing Android in your career, Just Eat, Capital One. Obviously, I'm assuming Android is something you're looking to continue with. Is that something do you maybe prefer more native over Xamarin, or are they sort of on the same level? What would you prefer coding in?
So this is quite interesting. I get bullied, well, not bullied. I get teased a lot by my peers, because I'm actually a bit of an Apple fan. I've got an iPhone, an Apple Watch, all that stuff.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, but I really enjoy the Android developer community. I think it's great, and just kind of like the development experience I find. You know, I'm not to say that iOS is a bad experience, but I just kind of feel more at home in the kind of Android space.
Yeah.
My next phone is going to be an Android phone.
Yeah, I bet it's very as obviously I speak to a lot of developers, so normally you'd find definitely iOS side of things. People are obviously going in Swift, Objective-C, normally have an iPhone, whereas everyone else has a Samsung or something with the Android platform on it. So yeah, it's definitely different to hear that. But yeah, by the sounds of it, you're going to get your next phone that's going to be Android. Well, at least then you can have a look. Do you still do a lot of coding in your spare time then? Or is it mostly sort of work now? Or do you like to work on many personal projects still? Or?
I do a little less code. Yeah, that's interesting. Is that before actually making the transition into working in tech, I would be looking forward to getting home and spending 2-3 hours in the evening coding on weekends if I've got spare time. Now I do it all day for my job. It means that I have less of an appetite, I guess, in the evenings. But yeah, I do have little experiments going on. Like I play with my Raspberry Pi a lot. At the moment, I've got an issue with pigeons landing on my balcony, so I'm trying to develop some kind of robot that will handle that for me.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah. Like you say, if you've got something that's like you say, you do all day coding, but if you've got something at home in your personal time that you're sort of ambitious about, if you want to get rid of those pigeons, you can work on something there. But yeah, no, that sounds interesting. I think a lot of people are in the same boat where if they've been doing it all day long, they're not likely to do it all evening as well, because it will get a bit tedious over time. And I'm sure a lot of people agree with you and are in the same boat there. And obviously, then in your career that we're talking about, you did Just Eat, so Xamarin to Android, and then you got your job at Capital One. So you've been there for over a year now, is it? Is it just over a year?
Exactly a year. I think it was my anniversary about a week ago.
Okay.
It's really great at Capital One. The community is fantastic. The kind of subject matter is great as well, and I've had a really great opportunity to be able to lead the kind of community of practice for Android across teams and actually across locations. So in the UK, Capital One is in London and also in Nottingham. We've got 5 mobile teams in Nottingham and 2 in London. So I've had a great experience in keeping that community spirit going, keeping communication flowing, and hosting some really great sessions to kind of talk about the kind of the more general points of our development, our kind of target architecture, and where our focuses are.
Yeah, so that community group, like you say, you're sort of engaging both sort of mobile teams, London and Nottingham, to get them involved. Does that include like a lot of video calls, or obviously if you're back in the office, that a lot of like meetups and talking about like the latest tech and things like that? What does that entail?
Yeah, well, with current circumstances, obviously we're all on Zoom. But yeah, I mean, we have kind of regular fortnightly sessions anyway, which are mostly over Zoom, even in the real world. But then we semi-regularly manage to convince our executive team to give us a whole day or so, where we will bring everyone to either location, and we'll spend a good day in kind of like a conference style sort of format, where we kind of we get to know each other a bit more, and we get to work face to face on various problems that we might have.
Yeah, definitely. So the way the teams are structured, I know you got 2, I think you said 2 in London, you got a few in Nottingham. Do you guys work on the same projects, or is it more London focus on their projects together as you are together, or do you still have sort of teams combined across?
So we're kind of split into tribes. So we have like different tribes that are kind of responsible for different areas, but we're all working on the same code base. So the mobile apps that we have in the UK currently are the credit card servicing app, and CreditWise as well. So it's kind of like our collective responsibility to build and deliver features for both of those.
Okay, sounds good. And like you say, it was a great opportunity, from especially what you've done now. What you've been probably commercially with Android for maybe 2.5 years. Now you've got this sort of community leadership role. It's quite a big responsibility, and it's nice to hear that companies are doing things like that, because obviously I know companies do, but there are a lot that probably don't do the same. And it's good to hear that you guys obviously get together. Throughout your career, obviously not coming from the traditional background, or you've obviously done a lot in your spare time, is there anything that you found problems when sort of interviewing or hard when getting a job, or have you had to overcome anything?
Interestingly not, but I think I've had quite a lucky ride of it, I guess. I think when I was first interested in looking into roles, and I was applying for the Xamarin roles in particular, I think at least at that point, that kind of technology was a bit niche, and so there weren't actually that many. I guess there wasn't so much competition for me as there might have been had I started off native or with another technology. So I actually found that that process of getting employment not easy, but yeah, it would. I certainly probably had a much better ride of it as somebody else might have done going straight into native development. And then obviously from there, I was able to, I had the opportunity to kind of gain the vocational skills on the job to kind of move me up to where I am now. Yeah, it often it always comes up in interview. You know, it's always the same question in some capacity. You know, also you didn't do a computer science degree, so what else have you done? So it's something that you definitely need to prepare for. If you're in a similar situation, you just got to kind of expect that question. But yeah, I think employers are more and more beginning to see the benefit of people like me and the value that we can bring to a company. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I hope that continues.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, another question I do have. Obviously, it was a few years now when you started doing Xamarin. What drew you to Xamarin? Whereas what other cross platforms were at the time? There was probably Ionic around that time, or I'm not too sure when actually now React Native was fully sort of approved to be used. But what sort of drew you to Xamarin itself?
I think it was the language, like the .NET framework, and using C#. The first language I taught myself was Java, and I saw a lot of similarities between at least the syntax on Java to C#. So you know, I didn't want to spend too much time from the ground up learning a whole new language. I kind of wanted to hit the ground running. And I had heard of Xamarin and kind of took a look into C# and realized that it was something that I could probably pick up quite quickly. And I'm glad I did, because actually, you know, for all the difficulties that come with cross-platform development, I think that Xamarin is great. I also have in my spare time played with React Native, which has also been great. And interestingly, there's a lot of kind of native things, particularly on you know, like native development, Android Studio and Xcode, things that have actually come from those areas. So like React Native, for example, you were able to kind of live debug, so you could like change code and you could kind of see it happening in real time on your emulator on your device. And I think that's something that is now becoming a thing, particularly for Android. So yeah, I think that there's a lot that those communities are learning from those technologies.
Yeah, definitely. And what are your thoughts? Have you ever sort of played around with Flutter? Obviously, being Android yourself, obviously a lot of people are talking about Flutter at the moment. Do you have much knowledge on that, or what are your thoughts on potentially Flutter?
Yeah, Flutter's an interesting one. I haven't played with it much myself. It's Dart, I believe. Is that the language?
Yeah,
kind of,
yeah, I believe Flutter is. Yeah.
But it's really gaining popularity. I'm hearing the word Flutter a lot more in conversations and at events and things like that. So yeah, I think I think it's definitely one to watch. Because like I said, I think that, you know, cross-platform development has really come a long way. I mean, to begin with, it was more kind of like black boxes and things like Titanium and other things that kind of didn't really give you a fully native experience. And then the early days of Xamarin Forms was very much, I think it was more used as like a B2B thing, where you weren't so worried about bringing really brilliant experiences for a user, like really delightful kind of UX. But now it's really evolved and it's really matured, and I think that cross-platform development can be a really interesting solution to a lot of businesses.
Yeah, okay, definitely. Well, look, Alex, I think that's probably all the questions from my side. Really appreciate you taking the time out today to speak with me and sharing obviously your journey through mobile. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be interesting to a lot of the guys here. Obviously, how you came from sort of self-taught Xamarin to now obviously working on Android and working on some definitely well-known apps and working for some well-known companies. Well, look, Alex, take care of yourself. Thanks again, and yeah, we'll speak soon.
Thanks.
Cheers,
bye.